Madam President.
Senator from Washington.
Madam President, this new year represents an opportunity for us to refocus and plan for our year ahead. Unfortunately, of course, for millions of Americans, their focus will be on just trying to stay afloat over the next year while they search for work. All of us here know there is no more important issue for middle-class families across America right now than jobs and the economy. This is what they want their elected officials to be focused on, and it is exactly what I think we ought to be working on here every day. Now, by reaching a bipartisan agreement last month, we did a number of things to work towards that goal. First of all, and importantly, we showed the American people that members of Congress can work together, that we can listen to each other, and that we can get into a room and, frankly, without trying to talk without trying to hurt each other politically. But secondly, by breaking through that partisanship, we finally ended that seemingly never-ending cycle of lurching from crisis to crisis. And third, we showed compromise isn't a dirty word, and that there is a big coalition that is ready to make some sacrifices politically to get things done. And finally and importantly, for our efforts to continue to grow our economy, we gave American families and businesses the certainty that they need to grow. But of course there is much more to do. And as much as we are heartened by the headlines that predict a strong economy this year, we understand just how fragile our recovery still is, with millions of Americans still out of work. Madam President, now is the time to redouble our efforts, not shrink from the challenges that we face. Because the truth is that all the economic predictions in the world mean nothing if we don't continue to support policies that help our middle class. And that work absolutely starts with extending unemployment benefits for the millions of Americans who've been losing their benefits since December 28th. Because unemployment assistance goes right back into the economies of communities large and small, and nonpartisan economists have found it is one of the most effective ways to build a recovery that lasts. Those same economists have said that failure to continue these benefits will cost us over 200,000 jobs, and renewing these benefits is simply the right thing to do at a time when millions of American families continue to teeter on the brink in states where unemployment remains stubbornly high. Madam President, I've come to the Senate floor today with the hopes that we can continue with the bipartisan momentum that we saw with today's cloture vote and that we've seen over the last few weeks, and take a final vote to provide a lifeline for millions of Americans. This should be an easy issue. It would be simply wrong to cut this support off while our economy continues to struggle and so many workers are really having difficulty finding work. Right now, in fact, there are 3 unemployed workers for every single job opening. If every opening was filled tomorrow, we would still have more than 7 million American workers across the country without a job to even apply for. And more than 1/3 of all unemployed workers have been out of a job for 6 months or longer, above historic averages and higher than in past recoveries. So millions of Americans are unemployed today not because they don't want to work, not because they don't have valuable skills, but simply because they found themselves in an economy that isn't creating jobs as quickly as we need to. These unemployed workers are desperate to get back on the job, and unemployment benefits made all the difference for them and their families while they scoured the want ads, pounded the pavement, and sent out resume after resume. In fact, I have received story after story from workers and families across my home state of Washington about what unemployment benefits have meant to them and what losing them would mean for their future. These men and women can't afford to have the rug pulled out from underneath them and are now struggling with each day that passes. One of these stories came from a woman named Carol who lives in Puyallup in my home state. She's a nurse. She was laid off from her job. She decided that in order to make ends meet, she'd start her own legal nurse consulting business. And so she enrolled in classes to help her hone her entrepreneurial skills. While taking those classes, Carol relied on her unemployment benefit to get by. Then, not only were her benefits slashed significantly due to sequestration, Carol just found out she's one of the 25,000 people in Washington State whose benefits were completely cut off December 28th. As a leader in the classroom, Carol has spoken to many other soon-to-be business owners who are suffering. In the face of unexpected job loss, they now feel like they're being punished for deciding to chart a new course in their lives. They're creating work for themselves and potentially others, but now have to decide if they can continue following that dream without the critical support that unemployment benefits provide them. Carol's not alone. I heard from a woman who was laid off from her job at a plant in Keyport, Washington, early last year, and she told me, and I quote, "Living in Kitsap County, we are geographically isolated, and finding work with so many qualified applicants right now is much more difficult. This year, I have applied for over 200 jobs, and in spite of a stellar resume, I've only gotten 4 phone interviews. I've lowered my standards throughout the year and applied for jobs far below my pay grade, to no avail. My husband and I have had to claim bankruptcy, and I truly worry about losing my home and displacing my children," end quote. Madam President, that's what people are facing today. And finally, there's Tracy, a woman from Everett. She's a former executive assistant with 20 years of experience. After taking time off from work to care for her dying mother and a daughter who was suffering from bipolar disorder and drug addiction, Tracy found herself without a job. And shortly after her mother passed, Tracy fell ill, making it difficult for her to look for work. While Tracy was receiving unemployment benefits, they were barely enough to cover the care her daughter required. Tracy told me that she now can't afford food and has lost over 50 pounds. She even asked that I send her a video of the speech I'm making right here, because she won't be able to tune in today because she had to get rid of her television in the process of finding savings. Like so many others, Tracy is searching high and low for that one break, and she told me, and I quote, "I just need time for someone to give me a chance," end quote. Madam President, for Tracy, unemployment benefits are not the solution. A job is what she wants. But they provide her with some critical support while she takes care of her family and tries to find that work. Those are just a few of the stories I've heard, but there are a lot like them. Millions of people across America, including an additional 38,000 in my state, stand to lose the benefits they count on if Congress doesn't act soon. These workers are not looking for a handout. They don't want to be a burden, but they need support while they work to get back on their feet and back on the job. So, Madam President, in this struggling economy, renewing these benefits is truly crucial. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said renewing unemployment benefits is one of the most effective policy tools we have to boost the economy and get money in the pockets of consumers. So I'm really hopeful that the Senate will act quickly without political games, because failure to do so wouldn't just be devastating for the families who count on this, it would also hurt many small businesses and communities to have the billions of dollars pulled away from consumers who spend it every month on food and rent and clothing. Last month's budget deal provided us with a glimmer of bipartisan hope coming into this new year. However, we have to continue working together to focus on improving the economy for middle-class Americans. We cannot afford to allow this lifeline to be cut off. The stories that I just shared today, like so many others, are heartbreaking. But they also show the fierce determination that so many who are out of work exhibit in the struggle to get back on their feet. They are stories of applying for work far below their own qualifications, of going back to school to earn the skills needed to change careers, or waking up every day to scour for jobs in their communities that all too often lack opportunity. And I believe it's Congress that needs to match their determination and grit. We took an important first step today, and I know that unemployed workers that I've heard from are watching. Today's vote is a glimmer of hope for them. We can't let it fade. We need to move this and pass this extension quickly, and the House needs to follow suit. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor, and I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander. Ms. Abt.
Leader. Madam President.
Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, I ask the consent to call the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, what is the parliamentary situation?
The Senate is in post-cloture on the motion to proceed.
Well, thank you.
S. 1845.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I congratulate Senator Reid, who I know worked extraordinarily hard to get the votes for this. I'd read something someone wrote in the press saying that they're afraid that Senator Reid didn't talk about these issues enough yesterday on the floor, and I'd point out that you can either talk or do. And he spoke, I thought, quite well, but he basically spent the time lining up the votes and won. A lot of people talk about what they want to do. Senator Reid usually gets it accomplished. I'd rather, as one who served here longer than anybody else in this body, I'd rather see people get things done, and he did. Now, speaking of things that get done, in this new year, in this new congressional session, the Farm Bill still remains as one of the nation's top legislative priorities, but it's languished in Congress's inbox. The Senate begins this new season. It's a relief at last to be able to say there's glimmers of hope that Congress is finally reaching the point where we could complete work on a Farm Bill. You know, we passed this Farm Bill twice here in the Senate, and there I compliment the chair of the Agriculture Committee, Senator Stabenow. She brought together Democrats and Republicans, many of us who had served at one time or another as either chair or ranking member or both on that committee, and said, why don't we just do it the old-fashioned way? Instead of just talking about a lot, why don't we just sit down and actually write it, pass, and bring something to the floor that could pass? They did, and it passed twice. And well, it languished over in the House for some period of time, and they're finally going forward with it. And Chairwoman Stabenow and Chairman Lucas from the House have worked throughout the holiday break, and I know my own staff, Adrian Wojciechowski and others, have worked very hard with them to produce a bipartisan, comprehensive bill to address the needs of farmers and families, communities, and taxpayers. You know, a farm bill is a dynamic element of our agriculture economy, actually of our overall national economy. A farm bill touches every family in ways large and small. It's now been more than 460 days since the last farm bill expired, well over a year ago. Since then, American farmers, though, have to farm every single day. They can't wait. They've had to make long-term planting decisions. They've struggled with that, and more than 20 programs, such as those affecting organic certification and cost sharing, or beginning farmers, or relief from livestock disasters, or renewable energy, or rural small businesses, they've all been stranded without funding. Rural small business is a major part, I'd say, the presiding officer of her state and my state. But then every state has some rural area in it. That's extremely important. The organic certification cost sharing, how important that is. Organic farming is the fastest growing area of agriculture in the country. But the Farm Bill limbo is part of a string of artificial, made by Congress dilemmas. This limbo not only hurts farmers, but their communities and our economy. It hampers efforts to help those who are struggling the most in our community with food security for their families, but also holds us back from greater energy security. Now, last month, the Republican leadership of the House of Representatives proposed a short farm bill extension. Well, short extensions are nothing new here on Capitol Hill. They could go by the term most of us know, that is kicking the can down the road. They patch things over from one crisis to the next. But just as a temporary extension to fund government offers neither certainty nor meaningful change, a short extension of the Farm Bill would not provide farmers the certainty they need to plan or funding for stranded programs. Farming is a business. And if you're going to plant, if you're going to harvest, you're making plans for months in advance, even years in advance, and you can't have the Congress saying, sorry, we'll extend it for a couple of weeks, bye-bye, we're going home on recess. If you saddle farmers with this needless uncertainty, it makes what's already a difficult life even more difficult. Even worse, the proposed House extension would prolong direct payment subsidies for another year, and because they won't do their work over there, the Republican leadership hasn't done their work, they senselessly cost taxpayers untold millions of dollars. Now, I wish we could leave it to Chairman Lucas, who has been very responsible in this, and Chairwoman Stabenow here. Let us move forward with their bills. Because at this point, the only acceptable path forward is to deliver a full 5-year comprehensive farm bill by the end of January that not only avoid the so-called dairy cliff, but help families put food on the table, improve conservation efforts, it'll support regional farming, and it'll put an end to wasteful subsidies. It's a win-win for the taxpayers and voters of this country. Now, I know I've looked at these. The Farm Bill marks the seventh time that I've served as a member of a Farm Bill Conference Committee on a 5-year Farm Bill. I know how difficult it is to bring a complex 5-year bill to the floor and ultimately to final passage after a conference. I don't in any way diminish the difficulty in that. I know I've been there, I've done that. But while there have been many significant changes in agriculture policy since the 1981 Farm Bill, which I had the privilege to write, one thing has remained the same. No farm bill is easy, and no farm bill is perfect. But to finalize a farm bill and to make it better than the situation today, the Senate and the House have to work together to reach a bipartisan agreement. It means whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, forget the symbolism, start dealing with substance. Stop rhetoric, go to reality. The Conference Committee is making steady progress. Chairwoman Stabenow, a Democrat, Chairman Lucas, a Republican, deserve credit and our appreciation for working closely together to bridge the wide differences between our two bills. And the cuts it includes will not go unnoticed, as we've already seen spending reductions from the sequester, followed by the end of the Recovery Act nutrition benefits. You know, sometimes we could talk here on the floor. We're all going to collect our paycheck every month. But we sometimes forget these cuts and policy changes affect real people in real ways. So we have to continue to do the best we can, provide the broad divides that separate many provisions in the bill. Now, speaking as a Vermonter, I would note that every farm bill is important to Vermont, just as every farm bill is also important to every state represented in this body. Farm bills make real difference in our quality of life. And the fact that Congress every 5 years or so would renew and pass a farm bill was once something that Americans could take for granted. In my time here in the Senate, this is the first time we haven't been able to. The delays have been unfortunate, and they've been needless. But I'm increasingly hopeful this recent dark chapter is coming to a close. Farmers and families around the nation are looking to us to pass forward-looking, fiscally responsible, regional, sensitive food and farm policy. And the two have to be together, both the food and the farm policy. Our farmers have to be able to plan. But families have to know when their children go to school, they're going to be fed. Because every teacher will tell you, hungry child doesn't learn. And if a child doesn't learn, what are we doing for the next generation? That's our responsibility here. So now is the time, without further delay, to enact the Farm Bill that will strengthen the nation and support the economy. I know we're up to this challenge. We've done it twice already here in this body, forging bipartisan coalitions. Now I'm hoping the other body, notwithstanding some of the Republicans who tried to block it, will come forward and speak not just for a small part of one political party, but speak for all Americans. With that, Madam President, before I yield the floor, I ask unanimous consent that all time during the recess count post-cloture on the motion to proceed to S. 1845.
Without objection.
And
under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15 p.m.
So the Senate is taking a break for their weekly party lunches.